Welcome to Talking in Stations. I'm Matterall here with my pal Strata. How you doing, Strata?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Really good. Off screen, we have Khan here from Faction War and Mining and all that good low-sec stuff. Also from Ushra Khan. How you doing, Khan?
Doing pretty good. How are you, Mineral?
Really good. Gregorian's here.
Hi.
And from Wormhole Space, Tiberius is also joining us. So we have a little crew. We're going to talk about today's news. Let's start with we're going to talk about the monthly economic report in just a second. We'll also talk about NOL in Delve getting reinforced, and then anything you guys want to talk about. So that's what we'll do. Let me get some visuals up so you guys can see what we're going to be looking at. And in the chat, if you guys have some questions, these are always, ask me anything. Well, almost anything, or ask Strata anything, since he's so popular on screen. All right, here we go. Monthly economic report came in today for November. And wow, there was some interesting stuff in this one. But we should first make sure that you know the way that certain things in the economic report are calculated has changed. Therefore, you will see some sharp drops and spikes that may not account for actual change in activity alone. And we'll explain that further as we go. But let's just start at the very top here. Looking at production and destruction. We'll make that as big as we can. And this looks fairly typical. It's been going down now for a while. That is the production. And destruction numbers are in this last month. You can see here is just one of these little squares is actual month. So November is right here. Both destruction and stuff mined is actually on a slight decline. Not much there that's new, but let's go to some of the exciting stuff here. Total destruction, we got to stop there first, is Delve, right? There's no surprise there. That is where the war is. That's the war zone. This is November, so this is post keep stars that were being dropped. So this to me looks like a lot of structures being destroyed. And we've talked about that over the weeks, how it's gone from, in total, like 4,000 structures down to about a fourth of that. That's just a ton of destruction happening. But in Delve specifically, you've seen a lot of destruction of structures. Okay, so no surprises there. You guys have anything to add to that?
No, I would figure that most of that, my assumption is that most of that value is in fact coming from structures. That Goons lost quite a few faction Fortizars that never got flipped as well, I believe, too.
Yeah, those go for about 30 to 40 billion each, and there's
Right.
a number of those.
Has there been any abandoned structures? Because if they were abandoned, wouldn't they automatically not get kicked into asset safety?
Yes, there have been, actually, but not faction Fortizars. Those were fueled and not abandoned, if I'm not mistaken. But there were a lot of like personal structures, engineering complexes and mining complexes that were just abandoned. They're stripped and they were unfueled. And so those things fell into abandoned state and they were taken out. And the loot was actually dropped into space, and that's what Pappy was sweeping up. They had a whole series of days where they were doing that. So
I'm liking the amount of net exports from Delve, meaning the amount of stuff being removed, probably by players trying to evacuate.
that would be interesting to see. It's going to be hard to tally exports because any ship that comes in and then goes out is counted, I believe. And so there's a lot of movement of big assets, maybe from Aquarius into Delve and Delve out.
Exports are asset safety.
Oh, yeah, we should check that out. Okay, total mining value. This is a story that is more or less in the last 4 months, the mining has really moved to high sec. Khan, you're somebody that mines in Empire space. You're in, if I'm not mistaken, Metropolis, right?
Metropolis and Hematar mostly.
Yeah. And how long have you been mining there?
Man, probably about 4 years now, full time.
Have you noticed more people coming into Empire space?
In the last 2 months, yes, most definitely.
Yeah. What form does that take? What do they come in and what do they do?
Well, what do you mean by form exactly? Do you mean like what are they flying? Or
Yeah. What are they flying?
a mix of all types of ships. I've seen things from ventures to mining battleships like in Praxises and Gnosises. I've seen orcas. A lot of orcas have been popping up in the belts, but mostly coveters and barges with freighter and transports and boosting alts.
Okay.
Like you're seeing a lot of the people in high sec becoming. I don't know if it's multi-boxing, but you're seeing a lot of fleets that are actually properly organized. So it's kind of cool to see all that too.
So they're not amateurs.
No, not even.
Have you noted if any of them are specifically from nullsec, or is there no way to tell?
I saw um I saw a few below sec / nullsec corp setting up in Osaka with some moon mining. But besides that, no, I don't think I've really noticed somebody specifically that would be tied to nullsec. And that was a lot of like horde corporations.
Yeah, and they're doing Horde usually does. Gregorian, you can speak to this because you're in Horde or were. They do a lot of different things, not just nullsec, but they actually get involved in highsec and they get involved in new content.
Yeah, I'm still in Horde, and yeah, Horde likes to keep an eye on what's going on outside of nullsec. Like, Gobbins has been particularly interested in Triglavian space recently. I helped him try out a lot of things that he had ideas for doing in there to see what we could do to get new players profitable activities in there.
Yeah, yeah, they're a little bit different that way than usual.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, the high sec branch of Horde hasn't really been doing nearly as much since they took regular ore out of moons, since moon mining was a big thing that they did.
Right. Okay, let's move on to total NPC bounties by region. And this used to be dominated by Delve many months ago. It was taken over by OASA, which would be Fraternity and Winter Coalition. They are still in the lead, but they have dropped to about, I believe they've dropped at least a third, maybe half of what they used to be. And Delve is nowhere on this list. They're gone, and they have been for a while.
Yeah. And most of the next few regions after OASA are Winterco rental regions.
Yeah. So anyway, they've been the kings of NPC bounty harvesting over the last few weeks or months, especially since the war began. But they're down. Everybody's down here. And I think that's even more visible when we look at faucets and sinks. Let's go see that. So I think what's interesting there is the ratio hasn't changed. OASA is still way over in the lead. We're going to skip down for a minute. We'll come back to the market stuff, but we want to see NPC over time. This is what's astonishing. So I'll direct your attention to where we're at today, and you can see that after November, bounty prizes in nullsec came under incursion payouts, and I believe that is not the first time it's happened, but the last time it happened is right here. It happened for maybe 1 week.
Yeah, it's like the second time that it's happened.
Right. So this big dip here, this gigantic dip, is blackout when nobody was really able to use their mining ships in nullsec for fear they would be destroyed. And a lot of alliances that were in nullsec and even renter areas said nobody undock. So it was pretty much a standstill for a while. You can see how that dropped all the way down, and incursions did beat it just for a few days there. Then that got lifted, right? You remember all that. And it returned not to normal, but it was still pretty considerable. And it is just tanked again because the dynamic bounty system kicked in, the ESS kicked in, the encounter what is it? Encounter surveillance system? Yeah, encounter surveillance system. But there's one other thing here that may account for that severe drop, and that is we don't know if the ESS numbers are represented here. So the 40% that gets taken away from bounty prizes and put into ESS, we don't know if that's counted because we just don't know but from CCP. So this may actually have already deducted 40% of ratting right off the top. And then the dynamic bounty system kicks in and lowers it even further. And that's why it may be a huge drop. What do you guys think?
So wouldn't the ESS money show up in the form of commodities? So we've seen like a slight uptick in commodity, faucet gain.
So there's if you break the numbers down inside of the MER, there's actually a couple of discrepancies that people have pointed out. And I've noticed as well is that the commodities versus the total amount of bounties coming out of each region doesn't necessarily add up correctly, as well as like the difference between the commodities that would be turned into bounty prizes. Sorry, the bounty prizes that would be turned into the commodities whenever they're stolen out of the ESS.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this stuff is counted. Let's see if we can see the breakdown of things here.
So you'll see actually that commodities is actually the top faucet this time around.
Way up here, this top blue one.
Yeah.
Let me actually make that bigger.
But it's not that it's grown significantly. It's grown a little bit, but it's the fact that bounties have come down significantly.
Right.
But you have to look at the ESS main bank auto payment because that is
here it is.
An addition to the bounty, right? So you add that onto bounties, and that's your true bounty value.
Yeah, so that's looking like 5.7 trillion in ESS. Yeah. Right. Well, fascinating number. What a drop that is. Let's go back to that. And then we'll look at something else that was curious. So this is, obviously the big news here is that NPC bounty ratting is just way down. But also transaction taxes are way up. You see that pink? They popped way up here. And that is right before December. I wonder if that's not the tax haven during Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Remember that? That might account for that. So I would expect that too. Let's actually zoom in on that. I'll get you even closer. You see this huge leap here. That may actually, it looks like it already stabilized going into December. That may drop again as people took advantage of that sale because it took half of your tax burden off if you were selling something. So instead of 5%, it was 2.5%.
The other thing is that you're seeing a slight reduction in the amount of overall transaction tax, and I would attribute that to if we're seeing less stuff being made, there's less stuff being sold, right? So you're going to have less transactions occurring and less tax.
Yeah, manufacturing looks really steady here. So does insurance. What do you think of this incursions spiking? That's a pretty good spike. I mean, it's much higher than it has been historically. For a while.
I think this is people responding to the commodity-based payout, or sorry, commodity-based market as opposed to the ISK-based market, or maybe this is, in terms of, the way that CCP may be trying to push this towards it. So maybe people are saying ratting isn't all that fun anymore, so maybe I'll go try incursion space, or maybe I'll go try a DD, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 4 out of 10 in high sec and low sec, or so on and so forth. So I think that, I think that people are looking at other options outside of just AFK ratting inside of null.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's included in incursions. It could be just straight Sanshia incursions. I don't know if any invasion style stuff is considered incursion. I don't think it is. But it's interesting to me that incursions, right? You don't really think about incursions that often anymore. But to see that a lot of people might have moved there to take advantage of the money that's there is interesting. I remember incursions.
It could also be like a location that's profitable or something like that. I don't know how all it works. I mean, we've seen other spikes back from Jan 2020, right?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely here. Spikes up every once in a while. Also, they almost took a hit. Incursion runners almost took a hit when the drone nerf came in. They reversed that nerf. So, of course, that was probably all past November. That was in December. So it wouldn't reflect there.
What's an interesting observation is that the bounty prizes are down to where they were during blackout. So
they achieved what they wanted without all the extra baggage that came with turning out the lights in nullsec.
I will be interested to see, because we got a recent buff a couple days ago for the what's the
ESS
dynamic system,
dynamic
right?
bounty
so
system.
They improved it slightly. So I'd be interested to know whether or not they got these numbers back and like, okay, let's correct it a little bit higher or something like that.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think, remember, we saw swift action to reverse or to balance out, to re-incentivize people going out and doing the bounty hunting in nullsec. It was quick. It was within a couple weeks. And of course, these numbers show you why they reacted so quickly, because that's a devastating drop.
In terms of commodities, is that mostly blue loot from W space?
Absolutely not. I would venture to bet that the last time that CCP has published blue loot data, we were looking at the total commodity value being between 35 and 40% of the total commodity output. Is it possible that it has risen since then? Yes, because the last time that they did publish it, I believe, was January of this year, maybe even back to December. I can't remember exactly when, but there's no way that that's that much coming out of W space, because I've been paying attention to the activity numbers, and it, unless we have thousands upon thousands of people that are farming W space, I just don't see that it possible that it's anything more than 50 to anything more than 45 to 50%.
Does anybody then? What is the commodity? What is it that they're selling to NPCs to get these?
You're looking at Overseer's effects, I think, is the majority
How much
of it.
Is Abyssal red loot?
Right, and then a lot of it is also Abyssal loot as well. Abyssal red loot is considered to be a commodity, not the modules and mutaplasmids and stuff and blueprints and stuff, but like the actual red loot itself. So I would imagine that a good chunk of that is also red loot as well. It would probably be close to, if not on par with W space blue loot.
Is it strange that it's not appearing on the top sinks and faucets?
The blue loot?
No, the commodities.
I'm not sure I understand. Like, what?
Sorry, there's the graph that shows the top 8 sinks and faucets over time, and it doesn't appear on there, does it?
Blue loot? No, not anymore. Didn't they take that off?
I mean, the commodity.
The commodity.
Because that's in November. That's the number one, right?
Yeah, that's the number one. So I think it ended up getting I think it ended up getting pushed up to the number 1 spot because of the ESS changes. I think there were just so many people who were selling off those bounty cash prizes from grabbing stuff from ESS. So
from October, that went from 30 trillion to now 34 trillion. So it's not a significant uptick. The only reason it's top is because bounties came down so far.
yeah, bounties have come down very, very, very significantly. What was bounties last month? Just for
55 trillion.
55 trillion. Yep.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's 20 trillion less being coming out of bounty prizes.
Oh my gosh, that's gargantuan. All right, so maybe CCP went a little overboard on the ESS and DBS. All right, let's move on to money supply here. We were looking at this just kind of for fun. We do notice a dip here in December. Let's see. The gaps are about 200 trillion. So that drop there is a significant little drop there in December. I forget what we thought about that, but we were looking at this for a different reason. And that was this gigantic long slide that happened in June of 2019. You'll recall that is about the time that Triglavian invasions began, but also when blackout hit like a month later. So you might have seen, and also there's a natural decline in summer for activity. You can see humps drop down in usually right in the summer months. So this is access to money that individual characters have. This yellow line down here that's very consistent is how much money corporations have access to. So this is a division between private wealth of players and collective wealth in corporations. And you can see collective wealth has nothing on private wealth. So this giant...
if we wanted to actually
check
it out, we could go back and see the breakdowns of what is it that's sinking out of the economy and why and what faucets are missing, right? So we could do the homework, but I think we analyzed it back then quite definitively as massively inactivity from blackout, right?
Yeah. So we kind of thought this long trend here is a massive amount of personal money income basically growing. Could have been because this starts at 2016 down here. That's essentially when World War B happened. So right after that, citadels were installed. Right about here is when Delve started to be taken over. It took about a month, 2 months, 3 months to take it over. And then you started to see a climb as the Goon Swarm put together their defending mining industry cycle that ended up growing and growing and growing. Then you saw blackout where all that stuff had to be parked. And I think you saw people exiting the game possibly and taking their money with them, because when you close an account that is no longer a character with income, that is the biggest delta of money leaving the game, is when people stop playing, all their money is taken off the table. So
and it would be nice to, if someone had the time to sit down and do a normalization of that graph, right? Because as you can see, it has been pretty much growing at a very similar pace over, I'd say, almost the past 10 years. Money supply has not changed considerably. It's been a steady, almost what I think we calculated at some point to 1.2, between 1.2 and 1.8% month over month, right? So if you corrected that graph for that, so you basically removed the slope, then you could see all those differences, right? Which is meaningful events that you can then go in and analyze and see, okay, what is actually going on here? Why is it jumping up or down?
Yeah. So one more point of comparison here. This IWI here stands for I Want ISK when the casino was banned, and you can see that drop. We'll go zooming into it right here, IWI, and you can see it points to this little drop right here. This bigger drop here is a change in calculation when the clone state alpha, it was something else. But that drop there represents all the money that I Want ISK took out of the economy when they were banned. And if you look, that's about equivalent to what's going on in December in these first 2 weeks. So we'll have to figure that out, see what that massive drop is there for December. Okay,
There was something about a ban wave that also heavily affects this, right? And then, of course, people leaving or biomassing their characters.
Right.
I guess the biggest disruption right now has been the change to bounties. So if you have a ratting tune, then you're like, okay, well, I'm no longer going to have the guy active anymore or whatever.
Oh, now you're doing prophecy. That's going to be visible sometimes in January, I guess. Then we're going to see all the rage quitting.
Caleb, here's your favorite, the velocity of ISK. We've gone through this and described what this means, but as a refresher, you want to tell us what velocity of ISK means?
Well, it basically means how much of the economy is controlled by either stagnation or insulation. So everyone that does the whole I will do the entire chain of production or anything like that myself, from
verticalizing
from prime product to end product, everyone that does that. So when something does not change hands, so money is not changing hands, they are pushing this graph down, right? What a high velocity of ISK is showing is that there's a lot of economic activity. So that means that the money in circulation is exchanging hands and wallets many times. Of course, this would, you could say that sometimes that implies some sort of overheating of an economy if it happens too much. But in EVE, we are desperately suffering from way too little utilization of money exchanges, so market and contracts.
But
it's usually only 1 point that happens, and then it's gone.
Okay, so this is the total amount, right, of ISK that's traded. So it's not in. Oh, but is it per the total available ISK? So if there's more ISK in the game,
I'll read this.
Then
it's total trade value for the past 30 days / divided by total available ISK, i.e., over the last 30 days, how many times one ISK exchanged hands on the market on average.
And you can see that it's a fairly unhealthy number, in my opinion. It's about 0.4-ish, right?
Yes.
Which means that every ISK in game, it's only of 40% of it that ever changes hand. That means that 60% are sitting there, they're stagnant, not doing anything, and basically just accumulating. So, yeah, it shows that there's way too much internalized market stuff going on, and too few people actually deal with each other.
But I mean, the other thing that you could say is that there is more ISK because it's based off of the total available ISK, right? Yeah. That's the denominator, right? So if there's more ISK in the game and the same amount of ISK is being moved, then
let's be fair, it only grows with about 2% or something like that per month max, right? So it's not like this number is going to dilute itself that much, right? The new ISK is not going to reduce that activity. It is really the same thing.
But is that? I mean, like, would that account for the trend down though?
Sometimes if it's a very small trend, maybe, yeah, you could argue that it is. If there's like a Oasa number of money coming in and no one is spending them, and there's no way of spending them, I think.
Well, we clearly have more faucet than sink, right? Yeah, so it's gonna trend down. That's just unless
when it comes straight bounty, yes. When it goes to the market, as in trading in blue loot or red loot, then you're going to see that activity here. I believe it would count. So
I think this is equivalent. What you're mentioning here is what Merkelchen talked about when he jokingly said that he had just bought one of those. Was it a Vanguard or something like that? Because he doesn't have anything else to use his money on.
Vanquisher.
It is a little bit. Was it a Vanquisher? Okay. Anyways, he bought some blingy stuff because why not? Because he doesn't have anything to spend his money on. And then he went into the whole spiel. But it is true. It is the wallet problem that we were looking at when we talked about personal wealth. It's also funny that there is this massive personal wealth that keeps changing, but corporate wealth is not
flat.
It's not prioritized. And this is again because of trust issues and utility, and that there is no benefit from actually having money in corporate wallets. And this is back to my endless criticism when Willie was saying that he had spies that could tell how much money someone had. Well, unless you're at his computer or hacked his account, you don't know how much organizations have, because they have such a small amount of the money in the wallets of the corporations. They are in personal wallets.
Okay, well, I see what you're saying there. But that would be interesting, right? To see if CCP wants us to do group things, then we should be compelled in some way to put our money together, which makes things more interesting, right?
Well, in the real world, this is handled by things like taxation benefits and business-to-business benefits, right? Whether it's sales tax or VAT or whatever people call these things, but businesses can omit that from the taxation. So something like that might be interesting. Would be funny to see what happened if a corporate order did not incur any. Corporate buy and sell orders did not actually have any taxation.
I don't know if they do. At least through contracts in the game, I don't know if corporate orders do, or they're a lot less than.
I think the biggest issue has got to be the trust, right? I mean, like the fact that you can extract a disgruntled person can just extract a significant amount from any entity if they have the permissions, which is just not real like a real world.
Yeah, it's not. And the fact is that you can make such a devastating blow so instantly if you know what you're doing. It would be different if you could say take only a certain amount out of a bank per day, or you could only, when you moved assets, the other directors were alerted, or they could do something to say like, we're not going to stop your behavior, but there's better reporting mechanisms to the group that something's happening, and some time locks to help the group in a different time zone recover and be able to do something. Especially now that you have mobile devices. I hate to be elitist about it, but if you're playing EVE Online, you have a mobile device, you should be able to get a notification on your device through the mobile app that, hey, something's going down in your corporation, a big blinking alert.
You could have like a certain amount accessible within a 24-hour period, kind of like your ATM does. And then anything more than that requires all the directors to agree to the removal of the money or something. Just
steal
but that's
something.
Artificial, right? What we need is something a little more granular, like in real life, right? If I have a business, I can control which accounts which people will have access to in my corporation, right? I can say that department has this account and this has that account, and then I basically control the flow and the availability and access of money like that, right? So this is something similar to what we should have in the game, and this is back to the problem that we only have 7 hangars and 7 accounts. Like this should be a granular number that you could just scale up. And I would, again, we've talked about this before when we talked about limited storage. I think they need to consider reworking the whole way that containers work. So when you add a new container, an account is actually linked to it, right? So you choose how many containers or departments you have in your corporate hangar and your personal hangar. And every time you do these things, you can attach a money account as well. I think they need to hook these two things together, because then controlling each of those on an ACL level would be very unique. So if I can take from the physical hangar, I can maybe also, if I'm an accountant, then also access the same affiliated account.
And we should be able to insure our accounts, right? We can insure ships, okay, whatever, but we should be able to insure like our corporation from an attack. That would be kind of cool. All right.
Well, and then you get sent to prison for embezzlement if you steal.
I like that. Yeah, Concord gets you for You know what? You want to have real life, fine. But in real life, the way we live, we have society, which has laws, which have checks and balances. And sure, players can build that, but it would be nice if Concord could help, or the empires themselves could get more involved. I think there's a lot of room for lore to get involved with a lot more law enforcement in the game instead of just punitive blowing you up if you blow somebody else up.
Just remember one thing before you go crazy, Justice Warrior there. In the real world, right, it's only because of very specific agreements that a person that is in one country can be extradited to another. So when it comes to avoiding responsibilities for crimes, it's actually fairly simple. And historically, it was even easier. So this is about internal stuff. And well, you know that this is a thing. If you do something bad, you get commissaried out of an airlock in most organizations, right? So we do have this policing. It's just that until the game, and this is where you and I fundamentally often disagree, until the game is fundamentally dominated by player groups and player organizations and not NPC-like affiliation, you can't have good policing and good justice.
Well, all right. Let's go back to, before we get too far off track. Let's go to economic indices. What's that?
Criminal justice reform in EVE.
Yeah, totally. I was going to say something, but I forgot my point.
Sorry.
No, it wasn't you. It was Caleb threw me off. He did some jujitsu, and my thought just went out off left field. Okay, this is the big one today. Economic indices for 3 years. We're looking at the chained layer indices. Those are indexes. The consumer price index is the light blue one, which has been pretty stable. Sorry, it's a dark blue one. But the mineral prices are that yellow one that you see that's just spiking way over everything else. The red one is the primary producer index. That's the first layer of building something. The mineral is the mineral. You get that. The primary is the T1, let's call it. And the secondary is like the T2 markets. So let's have a quick look at just how out of whack that is. Mining prices just skyrocketing over November specifically. Well, actually, October is when they skyrocketed. And then in November, they actually came down a little bit. So what explains that?
The favorite design choices over this year from the goons, right? It's the strangulation era. This is the effects of all those changes. That these two things are decoupling. That means that not only is the availability and the scarcity and stuff like that from prime products reduced a lot. There's a lot of people that has also then folded up their boats and things like that. So think of this if there's massive regulation of fish quotas and then all the fisher fleets go broke and stop actually fishing. That means that the price of the fish in the actual supermarket is going to go through the roof, right? This is what you're seeing.
Well,
and this is the type of massive spike explosion that I am opposed to, even though I am massively a supporter of getting this game back into some sort of healthy distribution of resources. This is not good. This is really just.
I'm not so sure, and this is why I think that's different. It's not, and I do resent the hey CCP, you're making us go broke. Pleas that come from Merkel Chen and whoever else talks about austerity being a bad thing and all that. What you're seeing here is how much mineral prices have gone up, and that's all you're seeing. How much they've gone up in comparison to where they were. Well, they were really flat and low and cheap for a long time. That's why it was so low. They are spiking here because demand is outstripping supply. Of course it is, because if you look at October, there's just not enough minerals for the amount of purchasing that's going on to replace all those ships that are being destroyed in Delve. So yeah, the price is going to spike because you don't have enough minerals. And you have a huge demand.
But you don't fix something like this with this kind of, in my opinion, with this kind of medicine. Shock to the system usually just creates a lot of stress and tension And in Eve, that is solved by the players by leaving, and that's not good.
Well, that's up to them, and they can leave if they want. But look at
Oh,
that.
don't
Look
get
at
me
that.
wrong. I don't care about people that don't want to play a more realistic simulation game where you can actually lose stuff. I don't care if they leave. That's not my point. I'm just saying that we might be having people leave that really shouldn't leave, because ironically, I think you remember this. The people that are going to benefit the most from this are also the ones that are stressing and raging the most, which is so ironic, because
well, they don't
the first
understand
people
it.
that benefit is the miners, and they were the ones going crazy angry. I think that's because they're not really miners; they're just secondary AFK accounts of PvPers.
Yeah. Con, jump in here and defend yourself, Miner.
What Evan, sorry, was kind of wasting up there.
So easy there,
No,
Miner.
no kidding. No, I really was just kidding. But one thing I did want to bring up, that might be due to the spike, for the, for the mineral price, is the nullsec anomaly changes that had happened when the Arcanor values got reduced to 50%. Let me bring my sheet up. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
And
the
then
competition.
you had the Bizot reduced to 70%, Kernite reduced to 75%, and Mercoxid reduced to 90%. And that could be the reason why you saw just a crazy drastic increase in the mineral price index, because with all those removed, you didn't have the ability to, of course, replace those.
Yeah.
I think I said that when we talked about it, that I do think that something is amiss with that number, because usually we never see things explosion-wise like that. So I do think that it might actually be a composition problem more than a behavioral problem.
Let's take a look at a longer timeline. This is from...
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to... So one thing that you also see on the graph too is the SPI and the consumer price index is almost close in pattern around the same time, where you see it kind of just jump up in price and kind of like go down, dip down again. So I'm not sure if that was a pattern that we can kind of like recognize or try to like put a pinpoint on it. But if you look for, right before it goes up on the consumer price and then on the SPPI, you see that almost exact pattern. So I kind of wanted to actually just ask, does anybody know what that was tied to?
That's got to be Tech 2 Moongu going down in price, because people are mining that rather than mining minerals in 0.0, right?
Well, yes, but it's also kind of, why would that not only spike but also be kind of similar to the consumer price index?
Well, it would be tied to, right? Like consumer price index might have Tech 2 modules included in that as well, right? So if the secondary drops, it may be pulled down by the consumer price. I mean, theoretically, the consumer price should be higher if it was only based off of Tech 1, right?
Well, right, but you don't think there was like a specific time or a battle that we could kind of compare that to?
It's a gradual, right?
Remind me what your question is, Con, because I'm not following.
I might not be explaining it correctly, but when I look at the graph, right, I see that the CPI and the secondary price index, they almost mirror each other.
Let me go back to the 3 year. I was looking at the full since you've started, but I'll go back to the 3 year. Well, I'll go back to the 3 year. Okay.
So do you see between October and November, September and October, how they almost are similar? And then right after October, they kind of just start to go down in price again.
Oh, the PP. Okay.
Really, what I'm just asking is, are we able to tie that to a certain event to kind of say like, oh, okay, that was this event that caused that to not only spike in price but go down?
Yeah.
Well, they should follow each other when primary sourcing, so things like mining, is stable. It's when it's not stable that these things decouple, either when there's added primary resource gatherers or removed from the game, right? Otherwise, they should follow each other, because most people, again, back to the velocity of ISK, don't really exchange these things amongst each other. So the majority still just follow suit. You go out, you mine, you build, you sell. right? So that makes these two follow each other, and then they decouple if this goes awry, that someone stops, but production still stays at the same level. So you can see these decouplings, and if something like mining is added to the game, like with rockwalls and stuff like that, then you get an over influx of things from primary production, so mineral, and that means it goes down, and then you will see a ramp up of some production very frequently, because then you have to you have to hammer while the iron's hot, or when the price is low, right?
Well, I thought that Strata said something that was interesting there. This moon goo is considered primary. Primary producer index, right? Because it has to be reacted. You don't just take the mineral part of it.
Reactions and moon goo.
Or PPI, right? So guess what was happening around that same time, Con? I think you had a lot of moon goo hitting the market. You could tell the prices have actually come down.
Well, moon goo is SPPI though.
Is it secondary? I'm talking about the well, it can be. Are you sure moon goo is SPI or SPPI, or is it PPI?
So sourcing of it is not. Reacting it is secondary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think what's happening is there's a ton of raw moon goo being dumped on the market. We kind of knew that Imperium was raising money. They might have been using that money to buy the mining minerals they needed for T1 ships, which is usually what giant fleets need. You want a T1, not a T2 fleet, usually. So they could have been dumping moon minerals in order to buy actual minerals to be able to constitute their Raven fleets, et cetera, et cetera. That's my guess.
Okay, that can make sense.
And that's still
I've
happening.
been hearing for about 2 months now that they've been selling off their stockpiles of moon goo. But
especially in around October, what happened? There was some large Keepstar fights, which really, funny enough, it was the Imperium saying that we're gonna throw these guys in the Pubby wood chipper. But in reality, in October, it was Imperium that was thrown into the wood chipper. They had so many ships destroyed, so much money in ships, in minerals. And that's
didn't they lemming themselves into the wood chipper mostly?
They basically did. They won the objectives, but they really paid a high price in minerals. So that may account for the price hikes, because they were having to buy more and more minerals as there's shortages, and they were dumping in October a ton of money-making sales of moon goo, which they have plenty of, or had. That's our assessment, but we're not 100% sure. But that is a big dip. Let's look at it in a different way. So that's 3 years, but let's look at it on a longer timeline just to comprehend how big that is. And you can see that it's never, the yellow line here has never been as high as it was last month. Not last month, in October. It has actually gone back down, stabilized and trended down in November in comparison. But this is since 2004. And you can see all the expansions listed up here. I'll zoom in so you can just appreciate what CCP does here. So these are expansion names. And it's a timeline of, so you can kind of match how an expansion affected the economy. But these minerals here are not based on necessarily an expansion. They're based on a new way of balancing the economy with scarcity. And that has had a massive effect, especially in comparison to where it was before. You see the mining indices in 2018 through 2020, basically, were as low as they have ever been. I don't think, oh, my bad. They were actually that low in 2010. Interesting.
I also think the reason for that spike also might be due to, of course, the LOSEC, anomalies, or, Crockeye Genesis and Dark Ochre only being moved to LOSEC. And for the people who do go out there, which is in low quantities now, you're seeing that price increase probably.
Right. All right. So we've gone through all this information. I think what people want out of an economic show is what should they do? Where should they put money? Do you guys have any suggestions for people? How do they make money in this game right now?
Don't buy anything.
No.
Stay out of investing in markets right now, because CCP is essentially trying to deflate the value of ISK, at least in terms of the amount of ISK that's in the market. And that's kind of one of the reasons why you're going to see. That's why you're seeing the indexes being as low as they are, especially like the secondary producer index and the primary producer index, because there's going to be there's an oversaturation of ships and modules and things of that nature, and people just aren't really interested in investing in doing so because it's essentially stagnating to a certain extent. Ore is definitely a good place to be. If you go and mine ore in HiSec and make sure that there's tritanium on the market, I know I personally will love you, and quite a few wormholers will love you, because you guys are the godsend that is keeping the dread hulls from being above 4 bill per. So, for high class wormholers, dreads are really important for us.
Well, I think right now, if you look at what CCP is doing, I think the only thing I would like to have my money in is actually hulls, ammo, and fuel.
I agree. Because if I were you, and I'm not you guys, and don't take advice from me because I am really, really hit and miss with this stuff. But sell your ore. I would even sell some ice fuels, although those are not as high as they should be. But I would get out of ore slowly. You want to watch the top when it starts to dip. Get out a little faster or whatever. And I would get into equipment because you want to go up the chain. These giant prices in minerals eventually will start to affect the prices of everything above it.
Well, it's more because the next phase, if they're doing things any way resembling what I suspect, would be to, I'm going to use the proverbial carrot again. They're going to put some of these raw materials and resources back in the game in a way. Yeah. That means that you're going to see that whole prime product thing tanking. But they're going to then introduce the next phase of the plan, which should be taking a big look at industry, and of course volatility in distribution. So the thing that you want to be ready for is that big crunch and bottleneck coming into industry, where it gets tied into some sort of limitation factor and some sort of overhaul of blueprints. I think
either less ability to create stuff out of minerals, or higher taxes when you do, or something will start to constrict the production of things. Is what you're thinking?
It's all about structures. It's all about cost and fueling of structures, and cost of fueling of activities in space, and limitations. So you can't do what you saw the wood chipper doing, right? Basically feeding 2,000 ships into the wood chipper, and then putting straight into production the same amount of ships in one station. That should not be possible. That is a ridiculous design.
So, back to the original question. If we're saying that moon goo is at an all-time low, or is very low, that might be a reasonable place to invest.
Yeah, especially if it's being dumped. Yeah. But also, I think here's the thing. CCP said, look, you're at the worst it's going to be. This is the hardest it's going to be to mine. To nullsec, they said this, right? But by the end of the year, you'll start to see some carrots. So it's a matter of time before you start to see some opportunities to mine more, to make more when you mine. And so the price for minerals should at some point peak right about the end of the year and then start going back down. So that's why I'm thinking selling your raw material is a good idea right now. Con, do you have something?
Kind of an alignment, because I can only speak on behalf of like mining, so I don't really, know much about producing. But what I would do is I would, mine and hold on to my moon goo, and if I really wanted to make some serious ISK, I would hit up low sec. I feel like still at the moment, low sec ores are really profitable for your time. If you go one jump out from your nearest high sec system, you can probably find a crocite ANOB. mine that for about half an hour and make 3 times as much as you would mine in a low sec belt. There are risks involved, but if you do it correctly, you would get more money, and then if you could just sell it right away, a lot of that money be returned back to you.
Yeah. Also, I honestly don't think they're going to take away low sexiness right now because it's been neglected so long. I think they're going to leave high incentives in low sec to get people there.
I mean, it's working. I've been hot dropped I don't know how many times with my mining fleet.
Is that right?
So yeah, I've been gotten a lot of times lately.
Oh boy. All right, I'm looking at this last map here, and this is actually travel through New Eden. It's really interesting to see just how many people are traveling in high sec these days. Is this the Silk Road, Caleb? This kind of looks like it's not the usual path that was there before.
Well, you can't take the same path from G to Omar anymore. Yeah,
it's impossible. So that's definitely changed. But I'm really liking how diverse the pathways are. But look at this, Hamatar Metropolis, a very busy area. It used to be not so busy, right, Con?
No, it's always been busy. But one thing I actually now do remember is Hamatar is almost, no, I think it surpassed Metropolis in production value, which is kind of crazy because...
Is Ren's making a comeback?
Well, Ren's is Metropolis. Hamatar is close, but it's not actually a Metropolis. So when you compare the two, you're seeing more mining out of Metropolis, but you're seeing more things being produced in Hamatar.
Okay, let me take this egg off my face and look up Ren's. I always thought Ren's was, I didn't know it was Metropolis. And I'm not doubting you at all. I know you're right. See, Ren's is Hamatar, isn't it?
Oh, you're right. It is Hamatar. Oh, Excuse me. My mistake.
No, you scared the hell out of me. Wrong. I thought I am really slipping. Okay, yeah.
No, I'm slipping.
No. So you mine down here in this area, right? This is your...
I mine in Damelin. So if you look at the map next to Alakar, whatever that name is,
here,
right above Bossaburger. So that one, and in Bossburger is where I live mostly.
Yeah. This is all Ushra Khan's area?
You could say that. Ushra Khan and Ushra Khan allies. But we still mine out of Ossakar, Abudan, and Jark. So those are like the 4 main systems that we mine out of. And Abudan is, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it, but that's the main one that all the moon mining is also done, and that's technically in Metropolis, but all of that stuff gets sold on the Ren's market as well.
Yeah,
so you got the ore belts, which are also great out there too. There's about 12, and then you got the moon mining, or not the moon mining, the ice mining.
Let's go look at jumps and see how. Ren's is it's still the Acapulco of EVE Online, right? It used to be cool in the 70s when cocaine was popular. Not so much anymore. All right.
I wonder how Heck has been doing with these changes too.
Let's have a look. Yeah. Oh, it's on fire, I think. I can't compare the numbers, but it's 23,000, I think. 25,000 jumps in the last 24 hours. And I think comparing that to Ren's is just going to be sad for me. Let's go back to Ren's. Yeah, 11,000, so it's twice. Well, Heck actually lost some prominence, but is it on the Silk Road? I forget.
I think it's between Ren's and Dodixie, right?
Yeah, I think it is on the Silk Road. Silk Road is the new trading route. It's really long. It goes through places.
You can do regional trading from Ren's to Heck to Dodixie and down that pathway if you really wanted to do like regional trading.
LOL Dunk Dinkle, he says, cocaine was great in the 80s too. I think he's right. I have zero experience with it, so. All right. Yeah.
We're going to have to get a hold of Dirk McGurk and ask him.
Yeah, ask him, right? Mr. Wolf of Wall Street. Okay. But I like seeing that, the pathways are breaking up, which means people are spreading out, and that's just really great. And that's due to Pakfen. Over here, you see in Delve, there's just a lot of people in this theater here duking it out and fighting. A little bit less over here in Catch. That's where the counteroffensive is happening, that Initiative's running with. And I bet you Providence, yeah, Providence is like nothing. But look at this, Devoid. I mean, this path here to me is like Amar to Rennes. That's what that looks like to me. That's great. I know where I'll set up a market next time. All right, that's your market news for the monthly economic report. If you have questions, email directly Caleb. Sorry. And he'll tell you what you need to know. In other news today, as you can see, there's a Keepstar being reinforced in NOL. That is the NC dot there. They're the ones in control of that system. Finally made it with their iHub to 35 days, I think, or 32 days. Able to put down a Sino jammer and immediately went to work on this Keepstar. This Keepstar will have an armor timer in 24 hours. So on Saturday, right after the meta show, actually, will be the armor timer for this Keepstar. And then about Monday, you'll see this Keepstar destroyed if it's not defended, which is going to be very hard for Imperium, actually. Gregorian, what do you say to that? Are you still here? All right, we'll assume that he took off.
Let's
Ashtarothi, how's it going?
Hi. What's the importance? Why would they need to wait so long for a Sinojammer? What does that do to the fight?
Well, there's an escalation path, right? You come in with
Sinojammer prevents the other side from being able to, the defenders from being able to bring in dreadnoughts to take out the carriers that are going to be doing the bulk of the work on the Keepstar.
Yeah, and there's an escalation path that's normal. One is you come in with subcaps, they come in with subcaps, you come in with dreads, they come in with supers that counter dreads, you come in with titans that counter supers, and they come in with more titans. And so there's an escalation path, but when you jam somebody out, you take capitals off the table for them, and they cannot escalate. So they have to come in with conventional warfare.
Well, they could theoretically have supers in the Keepstar, in theory, but it does it prevents them from bringing them in from the outside.
Yes.
They would have had to have already done it before the Sinojammers went up. So how do we feel that's going to make this battle different than previous battles we've seen?
I think this will go the same way as the FW Keepstar went in a few days ago. That was basically destroyed without any defense.
You mean the Hicks Keepstar?
Hicks, not FW. Hicks, yeah. In period basis.
So you think that because they cannot bring their supers, they don't defend it at all? Is that pretty much the...
Yeah.
This one's caught and killed? Okay.
Isn't this outside of the area that they're trying to defend heavily, like their Helm's Deep strategy or whatever?
Helm's Deep. This is Knoll is right here. It's a pivotal point. I'll highlight it for you in just a second. It's always been a really pivotal point. It was home to one of the first stations that CCP put out there, NPC outposts. But it sits right in the middle and has a nice jump range to the rest of the region. But it is outside of the E30 right here, which is their... Let me actually light this up with... let's see. I'll go iHubs and see how that looks. That's a little better. You can see possession. So yeah, everything this bright yellow over here is Imperium. It's my door now. What? Carry on. Somebody explain. I got to check the door. This is so unusual in COVID times. I'll be right back.
It's Santa's super spreader.
So is anybody here a good source for this? Because honestly, I'm not.
Well, the Imperium had a few weeks ago declared that they'd be fortifying one pocket that begins with E30I as their Helm's Deep, and they'd be staging all their capital stuff out of there and constantly camping the gate and preventing anyone from getting in with... So all the systems are Sino-jammed. so that people can rat more safely in there. And NOL is outside of that coverage. NOL is, I believe it borders NPC Delve. It's pretty much in the middle of Delve.
But again, back to Masroll's point, it seems to be, the only way that these guys could theoretically, take this system on, or the defense of this, would be to bring in subcaps and somehow take the field and destroy the. I don't know if they have to take the field to destroy the Sinojammer, but they would have to commit a significant amount of resources. And normally they have that 5-minute timer before another anchored Sinojammer is brought online. So again, unless they're wanting to commit a significant amount of resources for this place, it seems like they're just going to let it fall.
Did they change it so that you can't, like, I know that when Sinojammers were first being introduced, like the new ones, there was the problem of you could anchor several of them, so that way you could just online them pretty quickly. Was that rectified?
As far as I'm aware, that's still possible. So I know in the last fight, I'm not sure specifically about this one, or I'm not sure if it was the last one or the one before that, they had 1 or 2 additional Sinojammers in system, but you had a 5-minute window in which you could light your Sino and bring your ships in. But once that Sinojammer goes up again, now whatever you have in there is kind of, to some extent, by itself. So. There's a interesting question for the Imperium, though. Is this a strategy around kind of, excuse the term, blue balling them, not giving them fights, so that they lose morale, and at some point maybe pulling the trigger and fighting once they've maybe reduced numbers?
Well, so that's basically the way that World War B went too. Insofar as the idea was, like, while we are this strong enemy, our enemies can rally against us, but as soon as we crumble, then the allegiances will fall apart, and then we'll be able to rebuild, or at least fight individuals as opposed to the collective, and therefore survive. It's why they kind of fell over in the original World War B intentionally. That being said, I think that this is just a matter of, there's a lot going on right now, and while 1DQ is on threat, then these ones that are well captured outside of their territory are not going to be their major focus. They're not going to lose blood on kind of, like, that would be, if things were going super well and they were pushing things back, then this would be the kind of fight that they would figure out how to take. But while they're trying to stop the fall of 1DQ, they're not going to be worried about expending resources on this, would be my guess.
Yeah, I think what they've done is they created a doom clock. Did you guys already talk about that? Gregorian, did that come up?
Nope.
Today.
Okay, so the doom clock is essentially a list of important Keepstar systems that belong to the Imperium. And the clock shows, it's a countdown for each of those systems on when the iHub that belongs to the enemy is going to mature to the point where they can jam out Imperium supers. So that's a doomsday clock for each one of those systems. So what they want to do is they want to destroy the iHub and reset that clock back to 30 days in order to frustrate and to hold off the attacks. So I think since they put that up, it was very successful for the first few weeks, maybe, because it gave Imperium a goal. It gave them a way to go on offense, to say, we're losing territory, but we're resetting you, and you won't be able to take out our Keepstars. Because remember, no Keepstar in Delve is going to be destroyed. Those are some of the battle lines that they talked about at first. And I think since then, this is the second one that will be destroyed on that doomsday clock. Gregorian, does that sound right?
Yeah, Hicks was the first Doomsday Clock Keepstar to be destroyed, although that's in period basis.
Mhm.
But this will be the second one in the very likely event that it does get destroyed, and the first one in Delve.
Right. So yeah, things are going to be a little different than I think they wanted that to go. Right now, it's just hard to be the Imperium. They're just outnumbered. Let's just put it bluntly. It's not that NCNPL and Pappy have better fighters necessarily, although they might. They are severely outnumbered, and there's just really nothing you can do about it. And this is something the Imperium has known because they're the ones that created that scenario. Back with CFC many years ago, they outnumbered people when they fought them, and that was their modus operandi. That's you knew that once goons showed up with enough people that the fights were over. And I have a feeling that is exactly how they feel now. When Pappy shows up with enough numbers, not really much that can happen. I think an FC can give you some wiggle room, but once you're 2-1 or 3-1, I don't think you reach 3-1 here, but 2-1 or 2.5-1, you're in trouble. So that's unfortunately the iHubs have become important, not only to the Imperium, right? They called it out and said, these are important to us. We're going to track them. But now Pappy is saying, those iHubs are important to us too. And we're going to take those victories away from the Imperium. So we will show up with massive amounts of numbers for those iHubs and defend them until they mature, until we get our jammer up. And once we get our jammer up, we're taking that Keepstar down. This is a political win for Pappy, and that's why they're focused on it. All right.
Yeah, I think that it's important to note that this goes all the way back. This is a question that has been asked for quite some time, which is what would it take to truly beat the Imperium or goons or CFC or whatever they are? And literally the formation of the N3 coalition, their stated goal was to defeat these dudes, and they failed. They were torn apart, and BTEC-R was a major critical event. But at the same time, these guys don't forget what their goal is. And so this question of what would it take to beat the goons? Is it enough money? Is it enough people? Is it enough? What does it take to actually beat them? And they've been working through this over the course of the last decade or so. And this is their latest iteration. So these guys, this goes way back. They've been doing this for a while. But this all kind of goes back to the basic same drive, which is, can anyone or anything beat or take down the goons for real?
Well,
what does that even mean?
This will be the second time in 4 years that it's happened.
Well, like I said, there was attempts before that too, but this would be the second time that it could even be called successful, though.
Yeah, some of these people have been fighting goons for as long as goons have been in the game.
Well, it's but they were an empire when they became an empire. That's what we're talking about. 2016. There wasn't really a fight. It was almost an invasion and a collapse. The strategy was, I forget what it was called, the Fabian strategy, where you back up and you fight.
Right.
But it wasn't much of a war, really. It wasn't much of a war. It was an invasion with 2 battles, 3 battles, big ones. But once they got out-blobbed, they kind of left town. But they can't leave this town because this town belongs to them. So that's why this war is bigger and different.
Right, but this also goes back to kind of what Villy and ProGod and all them were talking about with their plans for the future and what their objectives are, and whether or not they can just feint out and have some of their the allies that are right against them fall apart again. Because that's my point. This all has history. The question was, can a coalition or can an alliance fight the CFC? Various different groups try to do that. The answer was no. Okay, great. Well, what if several alliances all teamed up together and made a dream team? Okay, we're going to do N3 and PL, and our combined forces should surely be able to beat goons. Well, BTEC-R says no. Okay, great. Well, Meanwhile, Test can beat goons. We have more numbers than them, but you don't have enough money, so you fall apart. Okay, well, great. We come back. Well, this time we have money. In fact, we make our entire thing about how much money we have, and we invade and we crush them. We have more force than they could possibly fight, but they don't lose. And like somebody called me out earlier for saying intentionally fainted, but this is important. Like the CSC or the Imperium didn't have a Fabian strategy like nonchalantly. They recognized the fact that they could not fight that fight, and so didn't. And by doing so, they didn't lose. And so the question is, how do you win against the Imperium? It's not enough to just bring a bunch of guys. It's not enough to have infinite money. It's not enough to have infinite people. You have to find a way to pin them to the wall and make them actually fight and actually pay. And that is what they're trying to do now.
And even if you had the power to delete all the accounts that they own currently, you would still not necessarily have killed them.
Well, you get into the whole. Go ahead.
You've got
Strata.
to defeat them culturally. That I think that's really what it is. You've got to destroy what the leadership, the feeling of power that they seem to emit. Right. Even if you tell me that goons have 0 ISK right now in their coffers, I would be saying, well, they'll go and they'll jump into a bunch of catalysts and they'll go like suicide, gank some freighters and get some ISK. Like there seems to be something of a culture there, and it's almost like once a goon, always a goon sort of thing. And even if you chop one head off, I feel like it may be a year, but the head is going to grow back.
We can all speculate all you want. I just wanted to make sure that we understood, like, as we talk about these things, like what's driving the forces in this conflict.
Well, because if you think about it, all the organizations that's ever completely dismantled in Eve has done so voluntarily, because it was more about internal things or conflicts because of some sort of pressure, right? But they defaulted or failed themselves. But if you have a situation of everyone in the game is attacking you and you lose, that's not really a leadership issue, right? It's not something internally. It's not your organization necessarily that's failed. So your gang is not at fault. So even if you burn down all the gang houses, if the gang members still exist and trust each other and believe that they can operate together, they will just reassemble.
Yeah, I don't think it's that easy. I think you're gonna, and that's not the plan. The plan is to suppress the leadership capability of Imperium. The people who follow them are going to be targeted and suppressed as long as possible. They'll be followed, and in doing so, they will have to make a choice. Do I want this pressure constantly? Is this fun? How long is it fun? Do I kind of want to get back to where I was? And people may say, you know what, I love you guys. You guys are great. But I actually want to like relax. I've been fighting too long. It's been a year. I hate these guys that killed us, but I'd rather just go and, do some of the stuff I used to enjoy to kind of chill out. And I think that's the calculation. The idea is not to let Imperium constitute. Sure, they can play as a little SIG. They can be code. They can be a trigger happy or whatever, really capable PvPers and regional, but they're not going to be allowed to reconstitute into a power that can influence the wars like they influence it now. That's the whole idea,
right?
As stated publicly by Pappy leaders.
Yeah, and so the thing is that like when you're in the Empire game, you're only as good as your Empire is. And so if you like that is the current like answer from their team, is that like we're going to make it so that you can no longer provide the services and the lifestyle that your membership has become accustomed to, that you promised them. So that way they will abandon you. That is the goal. That is the message.
All right.
I know you guys might hate hearing this, but I am going to bandstand a little bit for goons on this, because having socialized and hung out with them a lot and being slightly affiliated with them, I can just say this, that when it comes to goon culture, I see it as a little bit different than most other organizational cultures in EVE. In goons, you play EVE with goons as a secondary thing, whereas for most other organizations, that's the primary thing. So in I hang with goons and play EVE in spite of it, right? So it's in spite of EVE. Whereas when I play in other organizations, I hang around with those guys to play EVE. So there's a fundamental difference, at least to a very strong core of goon players, right? They don't necessarily hang around together because of EVE Online. That's just where it came from. That's where their culture grew out.
I've been there too, not as much as you, of course, but I don't know if those ties are strong as they used to be. The guys that are Goon Swarm that I would want to hang out with and play other video games with aren't diehard anything. They're just adults, you know. So I don't know if they hold on to that identity like that.
And let me be clear, I don't think that, like, there may be some people that feel that actual extirpation, the full eradication of Goon Swarm is an achievable goal or worthy of it. I don't necessarily feel that that's true. The issue is that, like, the institution of Goon Swarm has propped themselves up on a massive bloat of membership based on the idea that they have for so long been the place to go to become rich and wealthy and powerful in EVE, even if you don't want to stay with them, right? I've likened them to Rome. You know, if you move to the city to seek your fortune, and in general, if you want to do it, quote unquote, the easy way, then you would do it with them. That ends up being a problem for all of the other forces that would also like to recruit members and, you know, have people. So basically, if they can't support these people, that's why I was saying, like, make the people abandon them. Like, if the only reason why they've been able to keep them safe is because the threat hasn't been real, then they need to be the real threat. So that way the Imperium, the people that are only with the Imperium for the protections that they give.
Well, those guys will peel off pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of those guys are already gone. That's happened before.
And then the Imperium can figure out what they want to do next. But the point is that, like, as long as they are the quote unquote winning, this is an organization, like, you don't beat people by making them all quit the game in the same sense. Like, maybe they might fail Cascade, or some of the alliances might dissolve or something like that.
Nobody says they're going to be quit. Okay, that's a straw man. I mean, because you're not the only one that says that. I think other people say that. Nobody wants Goon Swarm guys to quit the game per se. It's like, you can continue playing the game, just drop your colors is what they're going for, and that's a different thing. So they're not trying to beat people out of the game as much as say you as a group no longer can influence the geopolitical landscape. That's what we're trying to do.
But more importantly, like I said, I sincerely believe that this stems from just years and years and years of denying people a win, right? This isn't just about, like, making them suffer or whatever. This is about, like, showing that they have actually lost a fight lost a war in a very real way. It's about making that, like, it being an understanding. Even in the last war, you know, we're discussing it right now about whether or not it was intentional, or whether or not it was a big deal, or whether or not, like, whatever. But this is the opportunity. This answers the question: can the Imperium stand up and fight this? Do they get to move on? The undefeated, up until this point, somewhat, like, super depending. If I consider this an extension of World War B, so this is still, arguably the undefeated champion of the previous rounds, now pinned to a wall.
Yeah.
So now that we actually are going to fight, you know, where will it land? This is the other bookend to BTEC-R, effectively.
Yeah,
I think it certainly lose their sheen, right, in doing so.
Right, and let me make it clear. Even though Billy said
has a very important point right there.
What's he say?
I think that's really the main thing. it's back to the bloating and the being overpowered. They were fundamentally an existential threat to a lot of organizations, and peeling off all the fat and all that bloat and dominance, and it's being taken down a few pegs, right? And I do think that's fundamentally healthy. But anyone that has these pipe dreams about eradicating goons are basically smoking something.
There's nobody. I mean, everybody is an adult that plays this game that we talk to, right? Like, we don't talk to young people who are delusional, and nobody really believes that's possible. Everybody knows it's not. And Billy did say that to be colorful, but his real meaning that may have been lost in what he said, because we've talked on a number of occasions about it, is to diminish their ability to influence the geopolitical board. That's it. And that's what it means to eradicate Goonswarm. If it drives their leadership out of the game because they don't want to be leading 25 guys, they want to be leading 2,500 guys, then that's a worthy data point for Pappy. And that may be something they want to do, is to drive out the leadership, but it's not to drive out all of them. Anyway,
and I also want to point out
go
that
ahead.
the Imperium, like as a culture, is actually like they're pretty good guys. Like there is a lot of the rhetoric and whatnot, and there is certainly
that doesn't square
some
though.
bad
Like,
actors,
they're pretty good
but-
guys, yet they're getting attacked by everybody. Doesn't square. Like,
No, what I'm saying is, well, they have a long and rich history and a a good face in front of them. But what I'm saying is that culturally, when you talk to the actual people within the organization, I find that they are some of the best at getting people engaged in different content and stuff like that. The reputation of like the negative reputations of nullsecers or whatever that I generally run into, I find the Imperium end up being less of an example of that. They're more likely to have guys in my fleets checking out, invasion content, or being, working with.
yeah, but those guys aren't the ones setting the messaging. That's the problem.
Right. But you're right. But so what I'm saying is that internally, the Imperium is just a gaming community like any other. So it's important to remember that.
Yeah, let me read some stuff. Ormia says they're being attacked by a mob that smells blood in the water. There was some other stuff here that I wanted to get. Yeah. Dunk Dinkle says every Saturday it's 60 minutes of hate on individuals. That hasn't helped, has it? I mean, it just motivates people to say, I want to shut that guy up, really.
It's funny though, but what I'm saying is that most Imperium people, maybe it's just it's the Imperium people I talk to, but a lot of the Imperium people I talk to would just rather some of those guys just
be quiet.
Stop.
Could you please
just stop? Like, because they're like, if you think about it, you have two pieces of this. You have the Empire, so you have the people that are like making the mining happen and making the logistics happen and all that stuff. And then on the other side, did I just lose everybody?
Nope.
Oh, and then on the other side, you have the faces, which their job is to keep them in the forefront of people's minds, and expand their empire and show their strength and yada yada yada. And so, like, most of the time, the grease monkeys. The grease monkeys are the same grease monkeys in both organizations. And then there's at the blue collar level, that's where you find the good guys. And honestly, they would just rather these dudes just shut up and stop causing so many problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the friction that's being built up. I think that's part of the plan, is to divide the. I think it's to divide the leadership from the membership. The membership want one thing, the leadership want another. If you can exploit that, that's a powerful weapon. I think coming from the Pappy side, that's true. On the other side, you have the Imperium trying to exploit the cultural differences of Pappy, saying, like, you guys don't actually like each other. You're going to backstab each other eventually. You guys are no better than us. Look at your culture test. You guys have some of the worst mouthed people in the game. And they're not necessarily wrong.
That's what I'm saying. Like, honestly, when it comes to just like my tertiary interactions with people, generally speaking, I have more positive experiences and find more positive people within Imperium ranks than in some of the other organizations. I find much more like blobbers and just bad actors and people being and I've thought about this for a while, and not to call any one organization or any one group out at all, but like what I think has happened is like they've created almost like a straw man out of the Imperium. They've created this monster of what it is, all of the shitty things about that. But then they kind of use that to then mimic that themselves, maybe in a mocking way, but otherwise. And so you actually see, I've seen just this growing nature of bad behavior among a lot of nullsec groups. And there's lots of reasons for that, by the way.
Those have always been there. It's really, they have been, trust me, I've been on that side of it. I've kind of been on both sides of it. And some of the worst characters are in Pappy right now fighting, taking down the Imperium, which are supposed to be baddies. And what you're saying is there are actually some really cool people in Imperium, and sure there are.
Right. And that's my problem is that I feel like sometimes there are people who have created like this hyper, like the nullsec troll kind of like image in their mind of like the worst of behavior that nullsec people get into. This is almost like this fantasy because there's so much like history of negative behavior and just people being complete shitlords and doing terrible things. And by bad behavior, I mean like everything from just like blopping somebody instead of giving them a good fight, all the way up to like doxing somebody or, hacking their, whatever. Like everybody hears these legends. And so they think about like the bad behavior and it's associated with nullsec and it's fantasized to a certain degree. And so I suspect that there has been a certain amount of like these groups that have formed more recently have a tendency to embrace that negative archetype and then become it. And those are the worst because that's an archetype that never existed for real before that.
All right, we're going to wrap up with some Dinkle quote here. The Imperium created their mythos. They cultivated their bravado. Now they are reaping what they sowed. And I can't disagree with that. Dunk Dinkle is kind of saying it like it is, at least from the perspective of nullsec in the last 5 to 10 years, where the Imperium rose to power. And it hasn't been a silent power, right? It's been a very arrogant power. And that's part of it. And it's very insular. They really only care about their guys. They don't care about anything outside of it. They're all equally bad. They're all equally up for grabs. And that is that kind of arrogance is really what's fueling the commitment from Vince Drake and from NC, from Villy, who was actually part of the of Goon Swarm. He fought the Fountain War. He was one of the main FCs there. And even before that. And now that he runs test with ProGod Legend, ProGod from from Nully has always disliked Goon Swarm. But you have Villy and ProGod together being one of the combining forces of this. You have Gobbins from Pandemic Legion, but now Horde, who has a history of being with Pandemic Legion. I don't know how much he dislikes the Imperium. It may be impersonal as far as he's concerned. But there's an array of leadership out there that do not like the Imperium, and they're committed to taking away as much as they can take away. And that's really being given to the new FCs that are coming up and everything. Like there is a huge commitment on the Pappy side of things. Otherwise, they'd be fighting, they'd be complaining, they'd be breaking up already. And that commitment is fueled every weekend by a meta show that is trying to raise their own morale and defy the people coming at them. But it isn't working. If I were president, I would be looking for some kind of alliance building, which I'm sure they have. And I would be taking a low profile as far as arrogance goes. because I would not want to say our servers are the most secure servers in the world. We dare you to hack them. Nobody does that in the cyber world. That is insane. You are inviting damage, and that's what happens every weekend. It's just surprising to me the lack of leadership on that level. Okay, we got to leave it there because we're way over. Thanks, Ashtarothi, for hanging out, and my buddy Strata, Tiberius, Caleb, and Khan. Thanks for coming, Khan.
Glad to be here.
And Gorgon. Do you have one last announcement, Ash? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, well, I had actually originally come on to discuss the new lore article that got dropped today, but obviously we don't have time to do that, so maybe we should try to coordinate with Baleful and get something done in the next day or so.
On Sunday or Tuesday, we'll cover that whenever you're back.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah, sorry, we went long, and I had to run.
No, it's fine.
Okay, cool.
It's not. I mean, it's nothing urgent. It was just that there was an attempted bombing of the Jita mining station. That's all.
Cliffhanger.
Oh.
All right.
We're talking politics.
All right, we're gonna end there and send you over to Open Comms, where you guys can unwind for the rest of this Friday night. Looks like Dirk isn't there, but the other guys are. Thank you guys for coming on. And if you guys disagree with us when we talk, I'm glad you're still here. There's room for that, and still typing in chat so we can see you guys. All right, here is the other show, Open Comms.